wasn't trying to be a know-it-all, but she was excited about her research. Cuchulain noticed the star-struck look in her eyes and judged her for it. But what we think of as shooting stars are really just comets, she said. She learned it from someone she met on her travels. Tin and copper were really both rare metals, especially tin, and needed to be traded over great distances. Iron ore was much more plentiful. Laine wanted to say how smeltering iron would start up. More people would take up arms, but it was only the warriors and the elite who would afford bronze weaponry because of how hard it was to make. She didn't want to scare anyone from being from the future, so she kept quiet. Since Lugh had retired back to his work, Laine realized just how alone she felt, with just she and Cuchulain. "You're too much," Cuchulain said, taking another drink. She would have responded, but in her mind she was on a bus in a new city, studying Italian verb conjugations. Maybe if he thought she was too much, she should show him what it was like to be with her absence, because she was a lot to lose. She knew she wouldn't be too much for everyone. Spear sounded like sphere, and she thought of her sphere of influence. She felt she was in balance with community members and in her society, making a positive difference. That day at the school they had the lunar eclipse and looked through flimsy glasses at the sun. In her role at the school, she had to be both a leader and a follower. Adults invoke order and children like chaos, and it was about forming a happy medium between the two polar opposites. Could she dance between these two spheres in perfect symmetry? In third grade science studies, a student asked her how to explain the evidence of gravity. Gravity was like unconditional love. It stays in one place, so you never know it's there, and sometimes take it for granted. The moon seems to stand in the sky, unmoving, yet according to the law of gravity, it should be falling towards the earth. Similar to the moon, she was a solitary creature, moving in a straight line towards her goals. But if it wasn't for the help of her family, teachers, and members of the community who had encouraged and supported her, she would never have made it this far. Now she was in this leadership role, and people still backed and believed in her, so she better believe in herself. She dreamt she was late and unprepared for class, but her students were still waiting for her and eager, and they even gave her a ride to the school.
I've waited for my heart to break into.
In her dreams, someone had left a perfectly good new snowboard and boots for her use. She missed the ski bus, but she saw an image of the ski lodge where her snowboard was packed into the snow. She'd tell her new class where she'd came from, how her brother inspired her, and how above all else, how dearly he loved his sister. And she was grateful for this love. She felt it even now. "Life is hard, but you are strong, sis." All leaders might feel a little strange in their shoes when starting out. It didn't mean she was unqualified. She was finding her footing more and more each day, and she was chosen or she wouldn't be here. She saw an elephant on the side of a building that meant good luck, serenity, and wisdom. With all things, even if she didn't feel like it was enough, if she just kept insisting, she'd make it where she was supposed to be. It wasn't easy to keep up with her projects and be a teacher, but the children in kindergarten seemed really impressed with her art. One little girl literally had her mouth open. She even cut it out and took it home with her. It felt kind of crazy to see how much influence she had over these little people. "You're an artist," the girl said. "Thanks," Laine said. Laine heard it again when she was downstairs in the bathroom. "You're an artist," and she was happy. It wasn't about her anymore, but this larger sphere, where she was learning to be more generous, more grateful, as she gained experience, hope, and patience. "Then go find someone who's less," she said to Cuchulain, wishing she had the courage to say it all the time. He took a sip of his beer. He said, raising a finger. "That's good." "Tell me if I'm getting drunk and should stop, okay?" he said. "Do you think you should stop?" Laine asked. "We should probably head out since Mebd's army is getting started on us." "I'll just finish this off," he said, "and then get one more for the road." It was another thing he deceived her about when they first met. He said he liked hiking. When he was done, he set the clay beaker down outside the door of the tavern. Max and his friends back in Montana had a collection of bottles they'd stolen from the local breweries. But since this was ancient Ireland, it was more of a beaker. He poured the remaining liquid into a sheep's bladder that secured around his belt. He looked into the distance, squinting, then said, "It'll take us maybe 6 days." Finally answering her question. "Hang on, I'll be right back," he said. She shrugged, wondering what made her rely on him so much in the first place, when she was a navigator of her own life, and a good one, too. When she closed her eyes, she saw crocodiles. They were a symbol of manifestation in dreams. These dreams often came to people who are creators, thinkers, and manifestors. But it could also mean biting criticism and having a thick skin. "I think it's smart you switched to felt," Mom said. "I know you were having trouble with the clay." "You're better off learning Spanish," someone said. But in her heart it was Italian she was drawn towards. When the mountains of criticism seemed too high to climb, and the rivers of doubt too wide to cross, she still had the foundation of stability, hard work, and self-reliance to push her into the brightness of her truth. She had the ability to trust her path, even if she didn't understand it fully. She knew deep down that this was not a rigid track, but the twisty trail of her intuition. Now she couldn't believe how she used to depend on someone she didn't really know, relying on him for her direction. No one knew any better than anyone else, and she had learned as she went that following him for a while had helped ensure she had found the right path. She'd come so far since that time. While Cuchulain went into the low-hanging door across the street towards the tavern, Laine stared out at the road, the painted trees that patterned the village like it was wrapped in cellophane, an upturned deer carcass of bone trees. The starkly picked overlook of those downy, soft, leafless trees frightened her, like a tropical island of palm trees that had been wiped out in a hurricane. In the distance, they collected into one major road, going uphill. Around the curve of houses, Laine saw a mill lift water in methodic circular rounds. She had a peaceful feeling from observing its stamina and consistency that looked effortless. A swan took a nosedive in a creek. The swan always emitted an image of grace and beauty on the outside, no matter what internal or external turmoil she was facing. This image overshadowed the hard work she did behind the scenes, all that was required for her to maintain her ambitions. Just because she carried her load so well didn't mean it wasn't heavy.